Hello, Hilltoppers. My name is Andy Lemons, and I have the pleasure of serving as your Executive Director of Health and Wellness. Today, I'm going to be providing you a little bit of information, sort of a tip of the iceberg around the topic of suicide, which I know is a very heavy-handed topic, but it's imperative upon all of us that we're able to identify the signs and warning signals of suicide in our community and provide help to those who need it. So we'll go into a little bit of information around the problem of suicide, and then give some tips for you guys as we get the semester started with you here on the Hilltop about how to care for our community. The problem of suicide is real. The timing of suicide in this country, there is one every 11 minutes or 129 a day. That equates to 25 attempts for each documented death. So if we have 129 deaths a day from a completed suicide, you can imagine how many attempts that we have. And then you start to factor in those that don't get reported. Of note, 47,000 suicides translates to 1.2 million attempts annually in this country. So the problem of suicide is real. And we also recognize that the ongoing pandemic in the last 18 months has certainly exacerbated this problem. Suicide prevention. We can't all be experts in everything, but we all have a very key role to play in suicide prevention. It's all about reducing risk factors for suicide and increasing protective factors. Major risk factors for suicide include mental illness, substance abuse, firearms in the household, previous suicide attempts, non-suicidal self-injury, low self-esteem, and exposure to friends and family members' suicide. The one thing I always like to point out on this is one of these risk factors by themselves may not be a concern. For example, firearms in the household in Texas may not be that abnormal. But when you start to factor in substance abuse, mental illness, and low self-esteem, then certainly having a firearm easily accessible in the household becomes a major risk factor. Major protective factors, right? We want to reduce major risk factors and we want to increase major protective factors. Family and or school connectedness. It is imperative that everyone on the Hilltop finds their community here, finds their fit here, feels welcome on this space. And I would encourage each of you to not only look at yourself and see where do you have school connectivity, but also your roommates, your classmates, people in your halls. All of us have a responsibility to each other, especially in a global pandemic, to help. Safe schools are a good protective factor. We're proud of the safety that we have here at St. Edward's University. Reduced access to firearms, academic achievement. Those who are achieving academically have higher self-worth. And of course, positive self-esteem. So we know about warning signs. We know what some protective factors are. How do we look for warning signs and clues? About the more clues and signs that we observe, we know the higher the risk. So we're going to take all of these signs seriously. There are direct verbal clues that we may hear from our friends, such as, I've decided to kill myself. I'm going to commit suicide. A very common one in college, if such and such doesn't happen, I'll kill myself. If I fail this test, I'll kill myself. If I don't get this date with this individual, I'll kill myself. For years, we've ignored these statements. Oftentimes people say them and we think, oh, Andy's not serious. He's just really stressed out about this test. I would encourage you, take those statements seriously. Ask the question, what's going on with that person? Indirect verbal clues. I just want out. I won't be around for much longer. You won't have to worry about me soon. Behavioral clues. Oftentimes people don't vocalize a change, but sometimes we can see a change in their behavior. Previous suicide attempts, co-occurring depression, moodiness, or hopelessness. Putting personal affairs in order, giving away prized possessions, unexplained anger. Is somebody acting out of character with no real obvious reason as to why that might be happening? Pay attention to the behavior clues of those in your community. Situational clues. These are things that sometimes happen to us. They're not behavior that we're exhibiting, but they are experiences that may lead someone to suicide ideation. being fired, or in your case, maybe being expelled, entering into the university's conduct process, um, loss of a major relationship, loss of a cherished therapist who we've been working with, financial insecurity, fear of becoming burdened to others. So oftentimes you can see how life situations can put individuals who may have other risk factors at higher risk for suicidal ideation because of the situation they find themselves in. So what is QPR? You've seen it in the top left of the screen. QPR is a anti-suicide company that manages training across the country. And we're giving you a small snippet of that. So once we've identified risks and we start to see situational or verbal clues from our community, it's time to ask the question. It's time to put ourselves out there and ask somebody, are you suicidal? Are you thinking about harming yourself? We don't want to avoid the question, even if we are afraid that asking someone if they need support may lend them to giving a response that would be very aggressive. For example, no, I'm not suicidal. Why would you say that? Even if someone's response is going to be at that level, it's important to ask the question. Then we want to persuade them. If they will be honest and tell us what's going on, how do we persuade them to stay alive? First, we listen to their problem. Give them your full attention. Don't ask the question and then say, oh, whoa, can we talk about that later? No, stay in the moment. Give them your full attention. Remind yourself, suicide itself is not the problem. It's a solution to a perceived insoluble problem. So we can't simply say to someone, suicide isn't the solution. No, we need to listen to them and help them identify what the insoluble problem might be so that we can help them. While we're doing this, we certainly don't want to rush to judgment, and we're going to offer hope in any form so that they know that there's care, love, and support for them as they go through a very challenging process. Once we've done that, we're going to ask if we can help. Will you go with me to get help? Offer yourself up to be in the moment with them. Will you let me help you get help? Will you promise me not to kill yourself until we found help? Your willingness to listen and to offer hope are going to rekindle someone's own hope and make all the difference in their life. And the last thing we do once we've persuaded them to live is refer them to appropriate resources. Here on campus, it's the Health and Counseling Center, or you can use the Hilltopper Helpline, which gives you 24/7, 365 access to licensed therapists. So whether we're struggling with suicide ideation, which we're talking about now, or we just have a lot of stress and anxiety from an upcoming exam, this number exists so that all St. Edward students can access licensed therapists 24/7, 365, no matter where you are. So feel free to refer students to use that number as well in this situation. The best referral involves taking someone directly to where you can get help. So if it's during business hours, walk over to the Health and Counseling Center located at Hunt Johnson Hall. If it's after hours, contact an RD, reach out to a supervisor, let a faculty member know, reach out and activate the community to help and bring your individual who you're helping to that community. Next best is getting commitment for help. Third best is getting a promise that they won't hurt themselves until we can work together to get help. Remember, since almost all efforts to persuade someone to live will be met with agreement and relief, don't hesitate to get involved. I close with this slide because I want you to feel encouraged when you start witnessing behavior change or indirect or direct verbal clues around suicide ideation. Do not be afraid to save a life. Go ask the person, can I help? Are you suicidal? Persuade them that their life is worth living and listen to their problem, and then refer them to appropriate resources, either here on campus or elsewhere. And let's help everybody live well, SEU.